Yo, what up guys, I'm Sammy and welcome back to the Soul Brothers channel, and this is my performance review of the Nike PG5. So the PG5 is going for 110 bucks, so pretty much in the budget price range. And if you guys do want to cop, I'll leave a link in the description box. This is the only colorway that is available right now, but I'm sure there's some other colorways coming soon. But anyways, links are below for that. But let's get it started off with the Tracciones, right? So the Tracciones looks very similar. It's pretty much identical to the Kobe 9, and the Kobe 9 had GOAT traction. And how is the PG5, right? So I only played on the outdoor surface. There's nothing available for me right now as far as the indoor surface goes. So I'm sorry about that, guys. But as far as like my experience goes for both indoor and outdoor surfaces, if a shoe performs well on the outdoor surface, it performs well on the indoor surface. If it performs bad on the outdoor surface, then performs bad on the indoor surface, right? And it wasn't the case for every single shoe that I've tested. I've tested a good amount of shoes, both outdoors and indoors, and it stays pretty consistent to that, like around 90% of the time, I would say. So yeah, how is the PG5 traction? And it is really good. It's phenomenal actually, right? It's different from the Kobe 9 where it's like not squeaky. It's a really silent traction pattern. So if you like a squeak, you're not really gonna get it from the PG5, because for me personally, I like to have a nice little squeak in my shoes, you know what I'm saying? The stop is really good though, very consistent. It didn't slip out really at all. So the stop was really good, very impressed with that. But I will say this though, the durability is horrendous. It's terrible. It's literally all the way worn down. Oh my god, I can't believe how bad it is. This shoe probably has the worst durability I've ever seen since I've been playing mostly outdoors since the start of the quarantine. This was really bad. I guess the Why Not 0.4, the LeBron Witness 5 was really bad as well, but this one was just, oh my god, it wore out really quickly. But I guess the stop is good, so that's okay, right? But if you're gonna play it on an outdoor surface, I suggest that you do not get this shoe because it's gonna wear out very quickly. But other than that, the performance was really good. Alright, as far as the heel to toe transition goes, it's pretty smooth. Here in the heel, you have a little bit of a curved shape, so that feels nice. It feels fluid and smooth. And then you have a little bit of heel compression as well. Here in the forefoot, it's not super flat, but it's not as like curved as the other Nike basketball shoes, like the signature shoes. Like for example, like the KD13 or the Kyrie's, but it still has a little bit of a curve, so it's not terrible. And you have a good amount of forefoot flex. It's very flexible actually. And here in the middle of the outsole, as you guys can see, we have PG's logo, and it's pretty much a midfoot chain plate for torsional support. So overall, heel to toe transition when you're running on the court is pretty smooth. It slaps just a little bit, but it's not a huge deal. All right, moving on to the cushioning system, right? So the cushioning system, as we saw from like the dismantling, and when we saw like underneath the insole, it looks pretty much the same as the PG4, but does it feel the same as the PG4? No, it feels very different actually, right? So the cushion is a lot lower to the ground, right? The PG4 is a little bit higher. It's not terrible court feel at all, but the PG5 is just lower than that, which feels nice, I guess. And it feels like, well, they're not calling it an air strobel unit or a full length air strobel unit. They're calling it like an air dot weld strobel, something like that. And it's pretty much the same as the PG4 from the looks of it, but it feels like the PSI is significantly lower in the PG5 as opposed to the PG4. The PG4, you can feel a lot of the compression. It feels soft, it feels nice right underneath your foot. The PG5, you don't really feel that as much. I'm not saying it's terrible. Like for example, if you've tried on the PG4 and you thought like the air strobel unit was a little too much, this is a lot mellower. This is a mellower version of that, so if you're into that, that's a good thing. For me personally, I like the PG4. I actually really liked it. I loved it. So I'm kind of sad or disappointed in this setup, but it's still not bad, right? You still get a little bit of compression. It feels pretty nice underneath your foot. It's just not as bouncy and just like not as much compression right underneath your foot, which, I feel like some people might like and some people will not, but it's definitely way better than just like having a stiff strobel board, you know what I'm saying? So there's that. And then as far as the foam goes, the foam is okay. It's actually pretty soft. There is a good amount of compression, but as you guys can see here in the heel, the rubber does come up here on the lateral side, which is a good thing. You don't really want this part of the cushion here in the heel to compress, because you know it'll add for a little bit of instability. So that's a good thing. But here in the heel, or like in the back of the heel, they left it fully exposed so you can get a good amount of compression there. So I had no problems with impact protection. Impact protection was actually very, very good. My feet were very comfortable. The air dot weld strobo unit was nice. I wish it was a little bit softer, but it's still nice, and court feel was good and all that. So I mean, cushioning setup is very, very nice, but don't expect like something crazy like the PG4, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, so there is the cushion there. Moving on to the materials. So the material quality is really, really bad. It's cheap. It reminds me of the PG2, and it's pretty much the same as the PG2, you know? It's very, very thin here in the toe box. When you first get it, it's super flimsy, so it feels really cheap in hand and also on foot. But once you break it in, it gets softer. It conforms to your foot a lot better once you break it in, and as it gets like softer, and like, you know, when you sweat and the heat from your feet kind of like break the material in, it gets a lot better. So I mean for 110 bucks, I guess you can't really complain about the cheaper materials, but on foot it feels nice, you know? And then not a huge fan of like the synthetic leather overlays here, like in the midfoot area. It makes the shoe overall look a lot cheaper, but you know, pretty much they use this like textile mesh material here in the forefoot and here in the midfoot. The tongue is a half booty construction tongue. It's more of like a neoprene material, a nylon material. It has a little bit of padding, which feels nice. And there is a little bit of foam on the sides of the ankle. There is a little bit, and then we have one single Achilles pad right where your Achilles is, so that feels nice as well. So the overall materials, really, you can't, I can't really say anything bad about it as far as on foot goes. I feel like it got the job done. It was a super thin, very minimal material. But if you want something like more premium, then you should probably look elsewhere. Moving on to the fit, I went true to size and it fits me very, very well. So lengthwise, I would say it's just a tiny bit long, but I think if I went down half a size, it would be a little too short. So true to size was good for me. Here in the toe box, it's not as snug as I would like it to be, but it's not to the point where there's just so much dead space that it's very, very uncomfortable. It was okay for me. And then width-wise, I would say it's slightly narrow. I definitely feel this foam. As you guys can see, we have this lateral counter. The foam does extend up, and that kind of like presses up against my forefoot, or like I guess my foot. So it is a little narrow, but it wasn't to the point where it's like very, very uncomfortable or anything. I just felt it like kind of squeezing my foot a little bit, so that was okay too. But for the most part, the fit for me was really, really good. If you have a wide foot or you want a roomier fit in your shoes, I would suggest going up half a size. And also, this shoe is really easy to put on. You know, we have a very, very high heel tab, which I like, and the tongue opens up a lot, so it's super easy shoe to just slip on, tighten up the laces, and it's very, very convenient. All right, moving on to the support and lockdown. Support and lockdown was really good. I had no issues with lateral containment. As I mentioned before, here in the forefoot, we have the foam coming up. Kind of reminds me of like a mountain or something, you know, like mountain peaks. We also have the synthetic leather piece in the forefoot. Here in the heel, we have a little bit more of the foam coming up and an internal TPU heel counter. So you're gonna be locked in, you're good to go with lateral movements. Your foot is really not gonna move all too much in this shoe. As for lateral stability, I was good as well. You know, you have a very low base, you know, you're low to the ground because the cushion is thin, and you have an outrigger. You know, the outsole protrudes out a good amount, so you're gonna be laterally stable, even though this is a low top shoe. All right, as far as the weight goes, this shoe feels super light, so I'm guessing like 10, right? If I remember correctly, yeah, so 10.86 ounces. That's extremely light for a basketball shoe. The average weight of my shoes is around 12.5 ounces, so 10.8 is super duper light. Does it feel light? Yes, it feels extremely light and extremely minimal, but also very, very responsive, right? You know, like I mentioned, the traction is super good. The cushion, there's not a whole lot of lag. I mean, in the PG4, for me personally, I didn't personally feel like it was super slow and very like too soft for me, but I mean, I feel like some people might think that, you know, but you don't really feel that at all here in the PG5s. Lateral containment is good. Your foot is locked into the shoe. There's no problems with support or anything. So, I mean, you don't really have to worry about the shoe at all when you're playing it. It's a great shoe. It just feels like an extension of your foot, basically. So that's a really good thing to have in your ball shoes. So yeah, I mean, they did a good job of shedding a lot of the weight from the PG4 as far as like the shroud and all that goes. So there's that. As far as the aesthetics go, it's growing on me. I don't like this colorway all too much, but there were some PEs that Paul George was wearing that I thought were pretty dope, and a lot of you guys were sending me some IDs, and some of your IDs are pretty damn dope as well. Tell us what you guys think of the aesthetics down in the comment section below. Moving on to the ventilation. Ventilation was okay. There's really no ventilation or like airflow through this upper, so if you blow through it, there's really no airflow, right? So your feet are pretty warm, but like I mentioned before, this material here in the toe box and in the midfoot is just extremely thin, so it'll wick away moisture. So I mean, your feet aren't going to be super duper hot, but you're not going to feel a whole lot of airflow through the material. All right, so wrapping things up, the PG5, my first impressions weren't that good, or actually like they were okay, but it wasn't to my expectations for my first impressions, right? I thought it was gonna be GOAT traction because, you know, the Kobe 9. I was super excited about the cushion as well because, you know, the PG4, I really liked it, but then it's a lot more mellow here in the PG5, so I was kind of disappointed in that, and the material quality wasn't good. So my first impressions were but for my review, the PG5 is a solid performer, right? The traction, like I mentioned, is really good. Cushion, I mean, you don't expect too much from it. It's still a nice cushioning setup, and it's still like slightly soft and all that, but just don't expect it to be like the PG4 if you tried the PG4. But the cushion is still nice. Materials, like I mentioned, it's super cheap feeling. It doesn't feel that great, but it gets the job done on foot. It's a supportive shoe. It's very lightweight as well. So I mean, there's really nothing bad I can say about the shoe, I guess, besides the durability of the traction. The durability is terrible. But I mean, if you're playing on an indoor court, you should be okay. So yeah, the PG5 for 110 bucks is a solid performer, and I feel like most people, like most play styles, whatever your play style is, whatever position you play, the PG5 is going to handle it all. So yeah, the PG5, I definitely did enjoy playing it. It's definitely going to be in my rotation. How heavily, I don't know yet. We'll have to see. I still love my Curry 8s. I still love the Puma Clyde All Pro, and I still love my KD 13s, but this will definitely be my rotation. But anyways, that concludes my review of the PG5. Again, if you guys do want to cop, I'll leave a link in the description box, but that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.